Thank you again for tuning in to the Libertarian Solution YouTube videocast. I'm Nick Coons, one of the hosts of the Libertarian Solution radio show. I posted an article that I wrote very recently called The First Thanksgiving. It was about the first Thanksgiving. I'll give you one guess and no hints as to what day it was posted on. You can check that out at libertariansolution.com, and it talks about basically the reasons for the first Thanksgiving. Essentially, when the settlement was settled, agriculture was done communally. It was a massive plot of land that everyone worked, and basically everyone would put in work according to their ability, and everyone would get food from it according to equality and to their needs. Sound familiar? And there was a lot of problem with famine and starvation and things like that. And the common lesson learned in public schools is that the Indians taught the Pilgrims how to make corn, and taught them how to grow corn and plant it and such. And that was the reason for the prosperity the following year. And not really true. For the following 3 years, they still had issues with growing food sufficiently, even after they learned that from the Indians. So what really happened was in 1623, they decided, well, it doesn't look like we're getting people motivated to really work the land. Let's go ahead and split it up a bit. So they divvied up the land so that each family had their own privately owned plot of land to farm. Now, from that point, everyone who, each family was, basically what would happen is they'd farm their land, and everything that they harvested they got to keep or do with whatever they want. They could eat it, they could trade it, they could give it away if they wanted to help their neighbors, whatever it was. And what they found was that people decided to work a lot harder because they had a direct benefit from the work they put into it. That was where all of the extra food came from, and the feast for the first Thanksgiving. Of course, you can read the details on the libertariansolution.com website of that article. But the main topic of this videocast is to talk about something that I got in response for it, or from that article rather. Someone had written in with a kind of one-line snarky comment, said, well, yes, I suppose child labor does result in higher production. Of course, it's alluding to a comment in the article that said that children would join their families in growing their crops and working the land. Now, after going back and forth with this person through email for a little bit, found out that that wasn't really the position. That was intended just as a snarky comment. So, not really anything there. But when I first read it, it was it was like faceplant. Like, is that really what you got from the article? And the one big thing, the idea there being, I mean, first of all, that your children working the land would make the difference between feast or famine in growing crops, whereas the adults wouldn't have that impact. So yeah, it's kind of absurd. But child labor, it's something that it's kind of an interesting perspective. It depends on how you are mentioning it. If you're saying child labor in the sense that we should enslave children and make them go to work, well, obviously not. Libertarians are opposed to slavery and free society. You don't have that sort of thing. However, there should be the freedom for children to work if they choose, if it turns out to be beneficial. And, in the 1700s and 1800s, it definitely was. When the United States was a new country, or even a new set of colonies at the time, the idea of working for money was kind of new. Being able to have a job and earn a living was kind of a new thing in that sense. Prior to that, people would sustain themselves by working their own land and getting what they would eat from there. But without any kind of currency or working for a job, that was that didn't really happen. Prior to that, hundreds of years prior to that, even money or wealth was acquired by invading somebody, by stealing from them, by monarchy favors and that sort of thing. The whole idea of making money, creating wealth was kind of new within the past couple of hundred years, and so when jobs were available, everybody jumped at the opportunity for them. So you'd have people going after jobs and trying to get them, and it's like, oh, I can create wealth. This is awesome. Maybe even more than what I would need, so I could use it for other things. So everyone jumped at opportunities to take jobs when they were available, and this included younger people, young teenagers. As economic prosperity increases, this sort of the idea of child labor starts to go away. People think of children working in dangerous factories in the 1800s, but the first child labor laws didn't come around in the 1800s. The National Child Labor Law that made child labor illegal in the United States was passed in 1938. It was pretty symbolic, of course, at that point because child labor was pretty much gone. By 1930, only about 6.4% of children aged 10 to 15 were actually employed. Of course, this new law had certain exemptions too, for working in the family business or for child actors or delivering newspapers or wreath makers. Of course, only if the wreaths were made out of natural holly, pine, cedar, or other evergreens. Yeah, a very powerful wreath lobby during the Great Depression, I guess. Oh, and there's one other important exemption. Working for the government. No age restrictions there. Surprising, eh? If you're 14 or 15 years old, you can ask for a waiver from your public school where they can allow you to get minimal job outside of school hours. Of course, the first job for most people is at the age of 18, and really the time for learning a work ethic is kind of past at that point. You generally need to be, working for money, working for something. Younger than that, if you're going to have a work ethic instilled, the best way to do that, of course, is to take on jobs. When I was 12 years old, I mowed lawns throughout the neighborhood. It was a nice, $60 to make on a Saturday. It was awesome. I got to buy baseball cards, and I have a really good work ethic to this day. Never had a problem with one of my employers, and I've been an employer myself now for 13 years. I've been doing pretty well with that. So, this is something that you need to have from a young age, and, child labor laws make that not really possible. It really knocks the opportunity out from underneath younger people. So obviously I would support the abolition of child labor laws that would prevent people from working. And the first thing that comes around is, we think that, children had jobs working in dangerous factories and during the Industrial Revolution, and child labor laws protected all that. Of course, obviously not the case. That stuff went away on its own. As economic prosperity increases, the demand for child labor decreases. I mean, obviously you want skilled labor, and like I said, as an employer myself, if you're worried about 6-year-olds being exploited, it's not going to happen. You're not going to have very young children being, slaved into working 25 cents a day. Like I said, as an employer myself, I would not want to hire a child. I do, computer sales and service, retail IT service, and we repair computers, we repair software issues. I have no need for a child working my business. Most of corporate America doesn't. There's really not a demand for someone with zero skills. I mean, if you're a parent, you've probably asked your child to do very basic tasks like clean up the room or wash the dishes. And unless you're of the exception, children are not very good at doing those things and listening to get those tasks taken care of and to do them well. So no, there is no demand for employers or by employers to have children working in their places of business. You're just not going to have that. There's nothing of value that they can provide. It doesn't matter that I might be able to get someone working for me for 25 cents a day if they can't do the job. So, I have to pay significantly more, and I have to pay someone who's skilled at doing the job. Maybe by the time someone's, 10 or 12 or something like that, they're qualified to, sweep floors and make a little extra cash. Perfect. Why not? They can learn showing up for work on time. They can learn good work ethic. They can get, they can be vouched for by that employer when they go look for better jobs when they turn 16 or 18 or 20. So they get that experience. Those things are all definitely positives. So of course we want to get rid of, child labor laws to allow those sorts of things to happen. There shouldn't be any worries about children being exploited. Again, there isn't going to be a demand for it. So anyway, no one really emailed me asking about child labor laws or had any complaints about that, but I just thought that that comment sparked an interesting thought, and that I would go on that and talk about the history of child labor laws and how they actually did nothing to curb child labor, because by the time the laws were passed, it was pretty much gone already. So, of course, Washington likes to follow in with a trend and then take credit for fixing it. And most of us alive today weren't alive during the 30s, and so we don't recall what happened. We just know, oh, there's laws against child labor and children aren't being exploited today, so the laws must have some kind of impact on that. Absolutely not true. For more interesting information, you can check out our show and other articles at libertariansolution.com. I'm Nick Coons, one of the hosts of the show, along with Richard Sutton and Jim Iannuzzo, and see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.